Hey folks, so after a busy last week, this week looks like it's going to be a little quieter. So I figured I would do a little bit of introspection. Among all the hype of GPT 4.5 and Sonnet 3.7, it almost feels like an eternity ago that Google released Gemini 2.0. For those of you who don't know, Gemini has three different model sizes. There's the Flash, there's the Flash Lite, and then there's the Pro. They also have a reasoning thinking model that's called Gemini Flash Thinking, and then they had the older 1.5 and 1.0 series that will soon be deprecated. As a part of preparing for this video, I ran all these models through a series of tests to see how they perform on a wide variety of tasks. In this video, I'll share the results of those tests and some of my thoughts. Spoiler alert, I feel Gemini has so much potential. I'm completely at a loss as to why Google is generally considered to be lagging behind OpenAI and Anthropic. Forget DeepSeek, Grok, Llama, and a host of other competing models. They have watched the LLM game so much. They were the original pioneers of the Transformers architecture. I'm sure most of you already know this, but the original paper on Transformers was released in 2017 by a team inside Google Brain. And yet they sat on it for years, until OpenAI came in and beat them at their own game. Let's take a look at this. According to a report by Menlo Ventures, Google barely has 12% of the LLM market share at the end of 2024. It is an improvement from the 7% they had at the end of 2023, but still, they're way behind. Even Meta is beating them at 16% of market share. And look at Anthropic. They went from 12% at the end of 2023 to 24% at the end of 2024. And while most of this gain is market share gain from OpenAI, it's still a significant achievement. Anthropic spun out of OpenAI and is still beating Google at their own game. Since my focus is usually on the enterprise space, I haven't personally tested Grok, but XAI is barely a year old, and already their models are astonishingly good according to many reports. And the sad thing is, the Gemini series of models are generally very good. I have some thoughts towards the end of this video about why the market share is so low, so stick around for that. If I were a Google shareholder, I would be very upset. I would be very rich, but I would be upset and worried. Before we continue, I would like to ask you for a favor. As you can see, we are a very new channel with a small number of subscribers. So if you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing. It costs you nothing and it helps us grow. Also, check out our website promptjudy.com. You can sign up and create your own custom evaluations, or you can look at community evaluations for a wide variety of use cases. We have published hundreds of evaluations and are releasing more every week. If there's one thing that you take away from this video, please let it be that you should be testing your own prompts with your own data to see what works best for your use case. Prompt Judy helps you do just that. Now, back to the video. So, let's take a look at the results of the tests that I ran. I'm not going to go into the details of these tests. I've done many other videos on this channel that talk about the individual tests. So let me just quickly jump into the results. For example, let's start with the harmful questions detector test. This is a fairly simple classification task, basically determining if a question is harmful or not. And most models do great, but as we zoom in on the cost axis and duration axis, look at all these Google models that are performing so well. So for this task, Gemini series of models is clearly the most cost-effective option. Now let's look at the named entity recognition task. This is a more complex task. Basically, we're extracting entities from text. And again, most models do great, but as we zoom in on the cost and the duration axes, look at all these Google models. They're performing so well. So for this task, again, Gemini is the most cost-effective option. Now, let's take a look at the SQL code generation task. This is a more complex task, basically generating SQL code from a natural language query. Here, even though some of the Gemini models miss out on some of the answers and they don't perform as well as some of the Anthropic models or OpenAI models, they're still very, very cost-effective, both in terms of cost and duration. Now let's look at the retrieval augmented generation task. This is a more complex task, basically generating a response to a question based on the provided context. Again, the Gemini models rank so well, do not hallucinate, and are very cost-effective. I should add, though, that prompt caching is helping Gemini quite a bit here. Gemini has much deeper discounts on prompt caching as compared to other models. The final task I want to show you is the visual question answering task. This is a test where you pass in an image and a question, and the model has to answer the question on basis of the image. I've made numerous other videos on this test, so I'm not going to go into the details of it. But this is a task where Gemini does not seem to do very well. All the Gemini models, to a certain extent, will hallucinate. Even if they're very cost-effective, they're not the best option for visual question answering. I would not use them in production for this task. So why is Google lagging behind OpenAI and Anthropic? They have the TPU advantage that makes them able to beat out competitors that have to pay NVIDIA for their GPUs. They have been building their own chips for years. They have by far the most compute of any AI lab. And as we saw in my reports, Gemini is often the cheapest model for large-scale inference. They also have the million context window models that are largest in the industry. They have the best talent in the world. They have more data than anyone else. They have YouTube. They have the best search engine in the world. They should be dominating the LLM space. They should have the best deep search offering. They should be dominating the enterprise space and the consumer space, but they're not. Here are some concrete steps I think they could take to improve their situation. First, maybe they could work with AWS to push their models on Bedrock and potentially even Azure. I know the probability of this happening is close to zero, but you never know. Most enterprise customers are still using AWS. By not being on Bedrock, Gemini is not even in the running for most enterprise customers unless they sign an exclusive contract with Google, which many customers won't do. The same argument can be made for Azure and other cloud providers. By expanding their reach, they can be legitimate competitors to OpenAI and Anthropic on Azure and Bedrock. The second thing I think they should work on is their API. They should make an OpenAI compatible API. One of our biggest challenges while building Prompt Duty was that we had to build a custom API to support Gemini. Anthropic and OpenAI's APIs look very similar and are very easy to use. Google should follow suit. To be fair, they did improve the API key management, but it's still not as user-friendly as OpenAI and Anthropic. Just look at all this code that's required to support prompt caching. For OpenAI, this is all automatic. The third thing I think they can do is to start hosting the Gemma series of models on Vertex. Gemma is a surprisingly good set of models for the cost and the size. It is a shame they're not widely available on Google's hardware. Since Google's hardware is custom built, they can probably host Gemma the most cost effectively. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.